everybody. Welcome to the Outer Bound. I am Patrick, and you are my friends.
Chili.
Buttermilk.
Eric.
Jerry.
Eric.
Kayla.
Oh, man, it's so good to be back from the week that we've been gone, and it's just been so much happening, and I'm so tired. But, you know, we're doing the best. You know, we have taken all the caffeine pills that Circle K had, and we are going to try and do this.
I went with Tim Hortons today because I was desperate.
That's the desperation that needs not.
Yeah.
But
listen,
it was it was either that or Pilot, and I should have done
Pilot House Blend, a little French vanilla, heavy cream. They have the cold heavy cream too. What did you like?
I didn't take my version with me there when I brought you
Oh
the
my
battery
gosh! So
charger. But anyway, so I ended up with Tim Hortons cold brew with 3 Splenda, and I choked all but like a quarter of it down.
Does anybody else think of Tim Hortons / Tim Hortons has a who? I just think.
I imagine they're good for their sweet coffees where you're adding 5,000 pounds of sugar, and no, it's still not good. And their pastries or cookies.
No, listen. I love our
never
friends.
been.
I love our friends from Canada. I remember my first Tim Hortons experience was at the TA in Monroe, which I think is Michigan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. They had a Tim Hortons, and so Eric and I went in there, and I got some good pastries, which were just pure sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Like Krispy Kreme, I don't think Krispy Kreme, in sense of pure sugar, some of theirs gets a little sweet, but like they also have flavor, and there's depth of character to their donuts. There's a place in Baton Rouge that I used to go to all the time. Excellent donuts, a lot of flavor. Spices in the flavor. It wasn't just about the pure sugarness. Dunkin' Donuts, Tim Hortons, pure sugar.
Yeah.
That's like, it looks like chocolate, but it tastes like sugar. It looks like strawberry, but it tastes like sugar. There's just no. And if you're a Tim Hortons fan, bless your heart, because again, Canadians, they're so nice.
Yeah.
I do like our Canadians, friends from up north. So we're there. I ordered a cafe mocha because that's what I used to get. That was my old default drink. I don't really get it anymore. But I did back then, and she goes over, pumps the chocolate syrup in, adds a little hot milk, like steams the milk in the espresso steamer, adds the hot milk, and then goes over to her pot of coffee that's been sitting there and pours the coffee into the cup of, and I'm like, where's the espresso? Like, a cafe mocha, is that not an espresso drink?
It is.
Everywhere in the world. And so, so I talked to her about it. She's like, oh, no, we don't use espresso in this. We use our regular house blend, our regular coffee. And I'm like, oh. And I'm thinking like, okay, well, this is about to blow my mind. It's about to be amazing because that's why they do it. I took a sip of that swill, that battery acid, and I was like, this is terrible. So we went back 2 or 3 more times to try different things because I'm thinking like they're a big company. Clearly I'm missing something. And all I can figure out is that they just have excellent marketing.
Excellent marketing.
They must. They really must.
That's funny.
I
That
don't
is
like-
really good.
How do y'all feel about it?
I don't know.
That'd be funny. Kayla's like, oh, it's great.
She's like, I'm a Tim Hortons fan.
She's
We have one
Nope.
in Bucyrus.
She's like, I have a punch card.
I don't eat there. I don't drink coffee. I don't.
Out of all things, we do have one in Bucyrus.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are Canada adjacent, so it makes sense.
Well, you deal with their geese. We
Yeah.
do too. Yeah.
That's
Uh,
when my cousin was out here for the
coffee.
Madonna concert. She wanted a Tim Hortons, so we did a Tim Hortons drive-through. She's like, "This is so delicious." I'm thinking, "You're from Seattle. You've got really great coffee."
Yep.
you got the mothership.
I know, but it was just something she wanted to check off that bucket list. So we did a Tim Hortons. I did not get one at that time. Only she did. Yeah.
No. So Pilot House. So next time
I
you're
should
Pilot
have-
House
I just-
blend.
I needed some though. It was a busy day.
They got the heavy whipping cream and it's ice cold, and you literally drove right by it.
I know. I'm sorry. I didn't drive right by it. I parked in their parking lot,
Okay, true. You did. You parked.
and then I drove by it like 4 more times today.
Yes. It was a super busy day. So a lot of times I will check in with all this different staff, and today I had some meetings planned, but they got canceled, and so I had a little bit of like a lighter day. So when I was talking to Vince on the phone this morning, I was like, if you need anything, just let me know. And he's like, I would love to have your help. And I'm like, dang it.
And I have to be desperate to ask for your help, too.
You do.
I'd
I
rather
know.
you not be in the yard.
Yeah,
I know how busy you are, so
no.
I'd rather you take care of that than be in the yard.
I think the former's more true than the latter. But I knew when you said that, I'm like, oh, it's going to be a long day. And it was.
It was.
I mean, like, I know y'all don't know when we shoot these podcasts, but we are now an hour and 25 minutes behind schedule, I think it is. So it's super late, and we're all super tired, but we're very excited because, as you may have noticed, our cast is a little bigger. Tonight we have the the two and only Kayla and Eric.
Again.
Yeah, again. Yeah, they were here last week.
We're double feature.
The double feature of the month. Yes, that's what we're going to start
One
calling
more
y'all.
and you become permanent cast.
You do.
It is true.
You do become
It is
permanent
true.
cast.
It's a long drive in from Bucyrus, but you'll figure it out.
We're busy next week.
Oh, it's true.
Yeah.
True.
Georgia. No, you're doing next week's Thursday.
Oh, yes.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we are doing next week's Thursday.
2 days from now.
We have so for those of you that don't know, we're actually going to do this week we're doing 2 episodes because our
Recording them.
we're recording them.
Not dropping them.
So we're not releasing them. So you're listening to this one next week. We will already have recorded that episode. I'm confused. Anyways, it's
I have that grandbaby to go see.
you have a grandbaby to go see that you're all
Yes.
excited about.
I am so excited. Yes.
I can't wait to hear back. I've already seen pictures. I've already seen video. I've already talked to him. He speaks well.
He does.
I don't understand why he has a British accent, but we'll get to that
Very
later.
strange.
Because
Oh,
his family's not British.
no. We left off last weekend with he was going to be. Well, they went in on Tuesday to have him, but
Yes.
he was born the following morning on
Yeah.
on the Wednesday
Wednesday.
the night.
I like a contrarian.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, you think Wednesday or Tuesday?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll show you.
So,
I'll show. A rebel from day one.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah, that should be his first motorcycle. A rebel. Well, we're so happy to have. I was going to say Melissa and Eric, and I still don't think that's right. Kayla and Eric back with us. To catch the audience up real quick, Eric, you have recently been hired on to Hyfield Trucking
correct.
as the maintenance guru.
Correct.
Ooh.
And you are, but you've been out of truck for a year. So you are, or 2 years. So you are actually coming out here. You're working with Vince and Mel Lee when she was with us, but she's currently doing missionary work down in Tennessee. But you were up here working to regain the guru-ness, one might say, to re-gurunize
Well, I like that.
My mind.
your mind. That way you can
Correct.
Yes. And so when we first talked to you last week, you were like a day or two in. You were getting your feet wet. You were having fun. It's now been 14 days later. Don't check the math, please.
Yeah,
We
we won't
won't.
check them out.
It feels like
It's
14
daggone
days.
close.
Yeah.
How do you feel now?
The fun has
Subsided?
sucked out of it. No.
Boy, he fits right in.
Yes.
No, it's been fun. It's working with. I've never worked, even though they were our mentors. Now I get to work with him every day. That's been fun. He's been teaching me some new stuff. Certainly learned, not only learned new stuff, but I've gained knowledge that I once had. I'm learning new things too, and we've got to troubleshoot some things, and that's been the funnest part, making sure my mind can still figure that kind of stuff out. So it's been good. I've only got a few days left.
Well, I
to see
have.
Jimmy.
How you doing with the pivoting? Like when something happens, and because I find that happens overall. Well, first off, in trucking, right? You knew that when you were all trucking. You think you know something, you make plans, whatever, and then those plans go out the door because you get a load. But we have to pivot, and I find that in the yard, Vince is always sharing that he has a day plan, but then there's things that arise, and you have to pivot. So, are you finding that there's a lot of that, or not a lot of that, or how do you handle it, or I don't know really what my question is there,
Yeah,
but
it's every day.
Yeah.
I mean, it does seem like it's every day. Priorities change depending on
yeah.
who's going in a truck and who's getting what truck and what shop decides to call to say, hey, this is done today. This is done now.
Yeah.
Some of them we deliver one. We drop it off that day. We have to go get it that day. So it changes every day.
Very fluid.
Well, and it happened this morning, right?
Yeah.
Where we talked about what we had to do, and we got fortunate today that the pivot didn't hurt us, but it helped us with Patrick and Melissa going to get that truck from FIDA for us, where we could stay focused on what we were working on. So pivots aren't always disruptive. Sometimes they allow us to focus more on one thing, spend a little more time on it. So
Yes.
it was good.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
but the one this morning that me and Melissa Buttermilk helped you out on, I wasn't expecting to call you in the fuel lane at a pilot and be like, I have an emergency. I literally started
Yeah.
the conversation with,
Yeah.
I have an emergency.
And as soon as you said that, I was like,
Turn the truck off.
Yeah.
he shut the truck off, didn't he?
No, I did not shut the truck off. I didn't shut it off. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it has. We got to figure out if it has an idle shutdown on it or what happened.
Yeah, it may.
Something happened and it turned itself off. And when it turned itself off,
Yeah.
and that amount of like
Spontaneously.
I have a pretty
turns
good
itself off.
idea because I've done this long enough. Like if I jump start a truck and I drive it so far with so much time,
Mhm.
it should give enough battery to crank itself up. It was dead. It wouldn't turn a light on. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
it's dead. Like it's dead. It's not even. There's no redemption. There's no clear.
There wasn't anything.
There was nothing left in it. Because that happened, I instead of bringing that truck back to the yard, I immediately said, let me take it up to our shop that changes our batteries and investigates alternators and stuff like that. Because I think
I feel like you're leaving part of the story out, though.
yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
I feel like
Our
there's a part of the
troubleshooting
story.
skills.
So I get a phone call
Oh.
after the emergency. Can you bring
You
me the
ready for
jump
this?
box?
okay, but in
You
all
ready for
fairness,
this?
no, we got to clarify. Let me set the
He
scene.
said, what
I
is
got to set
that?
the scene. I got to set the scene. I got to set the scene. Okay, so I am outside. Steps are removed. So on these big trucks, the battery boxes. There's two different places for them. One is adjacent to the steps in a battery box. It's really easy to access. The other one is underneath the steps. So like the two steps you climb into the truck. That's where the majority of our trucks are, but a lot of them are on the side too. So this particular one happened to be other steps. So I had to remove the steps. I had to remove the battery box cover. It's very little clearance.
Very
you
little.
are and there's a lot of stuff plugged in these batteries. So you're trying to like grab a clip and trying to like just finagle it on just enough to get some battery. So I did that. Buttermilk, on the other hand, walked around the truck, jumped in the cab, and was sitting there ready to turn the truck on for me.
Well, and so it's a Western Star.
It is.
The Western Star, you have to remove the entire steps, and the ignition key is in the middle of the console,
Which is
so
not normal.
It's not like the Cascadias or the M2s where it's right there on the left hand side.
Correct.
You can stick your hand up there and start it. So you can't do it from the outside. You
can't.
have to go into the truck to
or a
do
second person,
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
which is what I did. So now I'm sitting in the truck
Yes.
and I'm trying everything.
Nothing's working.
The lights on the dash come on when he hits the jump,
Yep.
and he's like, "Crank it," and it's not even going. Rah, rah.
Nothing.
It's doing nothing. It just nothing.
Nothing.
So I'm like, okay. So we turn it off. He's like, okay, and he redoes the jump box. He says, "Try it again." And I turn it on. Dash lights up. Lights in the cab come on, and I turn it. Nothing. We did this for
Well, and he's
like
got me on the
6
phone.
to 8
No,
times.
we did this 6 to 8 times before we ever
Before
called
you
you.
called
Yes.
me?
Before I called you.
Yep. And then he's like, well, try the generator.
And
He's
that's
like,
what
here
I
we go.
suggested, trying the generator.
You suggest that.
Yes.
So I went back there. It did not fire. So he's like, come back. Let's try it back up here. I'm like, okay. So we did it again and a couple more times, and it still wouldn't do it.
And Vince and I are starting to realize,
We need a tow truck.
about
We
to
need
call-
something
we're
else.
about to call
We
the
are literally
wrecker.
in the fuel island.
and there is trucks behind us sitting there looking at us, wondering when are we going to go. And if you're a trucker, you know that stress. It's like, we have to get. This
Yep.
is not an okay situation.
So you ready for
it's
it?
the worst place. Like I'd rather be broke down on the side of the interstate. It is just a terrible place to be broke down.
So there is an engine check light on, which Patrick said it had been on since he picked it up. I'm looking at some other things. I'm trying to look at the dash. What's it saying to me? And my eyes happen to glance at this shifter, and it says,
That's funny. That's
"Are
funny.
you ready?"
What does it say?
It says D.
It's in drive.
For dumb?
For those of you that don't know, trucks will not start if they're not in neutral.
Yes.
So it's in drive.
So
Pretty sure that's
I
cars too.
relayed that to Patrick, and Patrick says to Vince some joke. He says,
Oh, I don't remember what I say.
"We're amateur at this, or
Well,
we're,
so
we're
the-
truckers, or something." It was so funny.
The funny thing is, I couldn't hear you, but I said to Patrick, "Is it in neutral?" And I don't know what he said, but he was like, "Oh, yeah, it's not. It's in drive." So I think we had the thought at the
You
same
Right
both
at
had
the
the
same
Yeah,
time.
you did.
of
You did.
Yeah.
making sure the
Uh-huh.
truck's in
So
neutral.
as soon as we put it in neutral,
Actually-
she fired right on up.
Yeah.
With his jump, though. With the jump.
Right, with the
It
jump.
needed another jump,
Yeah.
but it then fired up. And we quickly.
Fired right up too. Like it was just like room. Like it was just ready to go.
But I think that was just the tale of our day, though.
It really was. And that was at noon. Yeah. So it was a great 8 hours after that. So I brought that truck straight to, and the whole time I'm on the way to the shop, and it's a good 20 minutes from there to the shop.
Yeah.
I'm just sweating. Sweat's pouring off me, and I could have turned the AC on, but I was nervous. So I just had the heater full blast, and I'm just sweating all the way down to the shop. Just not nervous. Nervous of like, did this thing cut off because it does have an idle cutoff on it, or am I going to be driving and I'm just going to lose all electric on the truck? And so, spoiler alert, I made it there fine, and I was able to find a good parking spot, which can be tricky there.
It can be.
I was able to get one right away, and walked over there, and everything was fine, and I got the other truck and was able to go. I actually got great news. There's another truck that we were not expecting to be ready that is ready. It ended up being fine. But, whew, man, that was a tense ride back over there. I was just like, please don't die. Please don't die.
Why would the AC be on, make it die? You said you were nervous to turn on the AC.
If the alternator has a problem and it's not generating enough electricity for the truck to actually run with, the AC would draw more power.
Yeah.
So if the alternator is not generating enough electricity, it could shut off.
So, like, nothing's on. Like, I don't have the power to the sleeper on. I don't have the.
Why didn't you turn on the APU and let the APU run the whole time?
So it's a truck we bought used, and it has a generator we don't use on it. And the reason we don't use it is because they are particularly prone to getting damage in rain, like when you're going down the road. So it doesn't have like our truck APUs. They've placed their filters and their intakes and all, so that when you're going down the road, if you need to fire it up, it will work and it will not ingest water. When you're going down the road, you think about all the water that sprays off your truck, and if you've been behind an 18-wheeler, there's tons of water that comes off it. These particular generators that's on this particular truck will actually pull that water in and create a lot of damage. So that's why we don't.
Raining today.
Yeah, and it was raining all day today. So that's why we don't usually spec this particular unit. And actually, it's one of the things it's doing at the shop is it's getting new batteries, and we are taking that generator off and putting one of our regular APUs on it because we don't want this to be a problem with the team once it gets in there. Yeah, so it's just how do you minimize the electricity draw so that the truck has enough electricity to run the computers to get you down the road. So
Gotcha.
It was a harrowing experience. It was fun. It was
Stayed in the right lane.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's got some weird things to it too. I made some notes.
I can lie to you and say that me and Vince wasn't laughing the whole time you guys were on.
That's fine.
It was pretty funny. I thought it was comical in the end with,
Yeah.
My first
20
thought was,
tries and it's still in D.
Yeah, my first thought was just another thing to add to this great day.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
It just goes to show that sometimes the simplest answers are the right answers, and you just forget to check the obvious. It happens all the time.
I've been on the phone with drivers really way before like Jimmy came on board, and even actually when Jimmy was first starting, I remember getting the calls of like, okay, I'm talking to a driver, the truck won't start, and I do remember asking him, is it in drive? And him being like, I'm assuming it is. Why would it not be in I'm assuming it's in neutral. Why would it not be in neutral? And I'm like, ask the team.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, that was the issue.
Yeah.
So, like, it happens to all of us at some point where we're like, what is happening?
Yep.
I think we've all been there. I think we've all done it. And it's the same for all the like, we have 2 different transmissions we use, and it works the same no matter which transmission you have.
Yep.
If you try to start it and drive, she won't do it. But, yeah, that's been it's a fun day.
That was part of the day.
Yeah. How was it in the yard?
It was a fun day in the yard.
I liked that the
just
weather held
amazing.
out.
The weather, the rain wasn't so bad that it was unbearable.
Mm-hmm.
That cold wind, though, kicked my tail today.
Yeah.
But Eric and I were doing
too.
great. Yesterday, too. Eric and I had great. Eric troubleshot an APU today. It wasn't working. And I was doing an outside check. And this particular APU, you open the side door. It's a pretty big unit. It's a tank unit. And when it's got power to it, it's got a green light on it.
Mhm.
It requires the APU to be running in order for the water heater to work. So the APU was running when I opened that door to check that cabinet, and I noticed that the light was not on the water heater. So I went and grabbed Eric. I said, "Hey, did you get hot water?" He's like, "No, I was trying to figure it out." I said,
Yeah.
"Come here." So I actually had plugged it in, and I unplugged it and tucked the cord back behind the water heater, and he came around and he looked, and like he immediately saw that it was unplugged. So, but that was one of those things where all of our water heaters don't work the same way,
Correct.
but that one does. He immediately saw it was unplugged, plugged it back in, went and fired it up, and it was working just fine. So, but those are the little things that you don't think of. You look at the big picture. Oh, did we trip a breaker? Is there the water heater not working? But he picked up right away that it wasn't plugged in. So that was a good positive for today. We had some positives. We got a lot of work done.
Yeah.
With the help of you and Buttermilk, we got a lot accomplished today that I was surprised we accomplished. Like the last truck we did the initial on, I didn't think that would happen today. But because you guys helped us out, we were able to knock that out today, and tomorrow we can move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So,
Productive day, but stressful.
but stressful.
Stressful
Sure.
for sure.
Sure.
And then tomorrow, we'll be back at it. I think all four of us will be back in the yard again, so it'll be a little different day,
we
but
can move through some stuff tomorrow.
absolutely. It's funny how it's just like an expediting where everything ebbs and flows, and it's kind of been flowing pretty good for the past few weeks. And then all of a sudden we get like a little
Yeah.
Burst.
Yeah, a little
little
smack in the
little
face.
smack in the face, a little burst of
Yep.
of pressure. And what's going to happen is over the next 3 weeks, we're going to declog it, and it's going to
Right.
be fine again. But it's like for now, it's like, oh, okay, well, we got to do this. Let's get in and let's figure some things out. And again, you kind of hit on it when you were like talking about how things change with the shops. It's like people don't realize how much we are at their mercy.
We really are.
It is brutal.
Yeah, we
So
really are.
We have a few good shops though.
we actually have some great shops.
We do.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
some good shops.
All the shops that are on my list of approved Columbus vendors are really good. A couple of them are really slow,
Yes.
but they do great work.
Yeah.
And that's been a frustration because we've actually talked to other shops to kind of be like, hey, maybe you're a good alternative. And a lot of times we find out is they're not as good. So it's like,
Yeah.
Their
y-
quality.
y-
They're
you know?
not
Goes
as good,
bad.
or they don't do the type of work we need.
Mhm.
Our trucks are pretty specialized, and they aren't familiar with them.
Yes.
So, do you allow them to learn, or take it to the the shop who built it in the first place, and take a little time?
Absolutely. All that to say, I love what we do. It's just been a day. But this weekend we had some beautiful weather. We actually got
That was
to
gorgeous.
we got to hang out, and if you'll all humor me, I think we're all going to do this together, right?
Yeah.
Me.
What are we doing? We're singing again?
Happy
Oh my
birthday
goodness.
to you.
Oh, gosh.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Buttermilk. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
And many more.
So how did you get the name Buttermilk, by the way?
Oh, I named myself. That's the
Okay.
best way to do it, right?
Yes.
So speaking of Cincinnati, as you're coming down from Kentucky, dropping down into Cincinnati, there is the
I'm
Buttermilk.
sorry, what?
Coming down Kentucky, dropping into Cincinnati.
Cincinnati
Come
is
up.
lower.
Am I
than
the
Kentucky.
only one that's
Well, I was letting her just go with it. But
Did I say it wrong again?
We were northbound on
okay?
I-71.
But if north is south and south
There
is
you
north, go ahead.
Right.
Oh, sorry. So at any rate, you're coming down into Cincinnati,
Yep.
Yes.
and
Up.
down.
Down the hill.
Columbus.
Oh, down the
Down the
hill.
hill.
Now I follow.
You're in
were.
Kentucky,
you're talking-
coming down
You're
the
talking
hill.
elevation, not
Right.
Yes.
north south.
We were
Okay.
Down the
northbound on I-71.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're dropping down into Cincinnati. There is a big green sign that says Buttermilk Parkway.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Very familiar.
And Cincinnati, usually, as you two know, when you drive shifts, it seems like you always drive through this specific city and your partner doesn't, kind of thing. It
Yes.
always seems to
At
work
night.
that way. And this was at night. So
And it's lit up beautifully.
something about Buttermilk Parkway made me giggle. And so I'd be giggling by myself. It was our last ride.
It was our last ride.
It was our last trip. I was driving us back from after a vacation and in the truck. And Vince was sitting up front, and we come up on it. And it's like the first time we've ever ridden through Cincinnati in the 3 years we've been out here together. And I shared with him, I said, Buttermilk makes me giggle, Buttermilk Parkway. I don't know why. And then I looked over at him and I said, fun fact. My indigenous name is
Buttermilk.
Buttermilk. Hoo ha ha. And we both started cracking up, laughing that I had this name and blah, blah, blah. But at any rate, so from then on, it's been a running joke, and I have now been called Buttermilk for
Yes,
probably, how long have we been off the road now?
2 years.
2 years, and I've been called Buttermilk for
Yeah.
2 years. Vince calls me MDAC, MDAC, which are my initials, and forever in a crowd, he calls me MDAC. It's normally a Vince thing, and that's been a relationship, but I can hear MDAC, like literally if we're in a crowd, because sometimes Melissa gets a little lost on
Yeah.
my ears, but should he say MDAC or Buttermilk, I know exactly that I'm the person that should be looking at someone talking to me.
Your name and my email is MDAC.
MDAC, yeah.
We
Which
all-
is fine. And it's okay if other people call me that.
I don't
Just-
ever call you that. It's just whenever I type in your name and my email, that's what
Yeah.
pops up for some reason.
Yeah.
That's
so,
funny.
but
Well, we all embraced Buttermilk, I think, pretty well, right?
I think so.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a-
Buttermilk's
as
been
a
fun.
staff, as a
and
group,
for
we
me,
all-
when people call me that, it is a time or a reminiscence for me
Yeah.
of what it stands for, which is driving on the truck. Again, I would literally be giggling by myself in the truck. 'Cause I don't know why. It just made me, just one of those words that make me
Sure.
laugh. But so Buttermilk it is.
So from here on out, your name tags doesn't need to say Melissa.
It just
When
says
we're all around,
Buttermilk.
It needs to say Buttermilk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know, and because we already had another Melissa on staff too, it really helped having your name be
Different.
Buttermilk.
Yeah.
True.
Yep.
that.
yeah.
Very true.
If we're ever in a room together and people don't know, her and I, Mel Lee, Melissa Lee, her and I have agreed that I'm Melissa and she's Mel. Like if we're literally in a group,
Yeah.
and that's easy to differentiate from.
I
but
try to call her now Mel
yeah,
all the time.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier actually because Vince, that's all Vince calls her.
yes,
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier for me to remember who's.
Yep.
You know,
But-
she's Mel.
But
she's
see, I
Melissa.
screw it up all the time. I call Buttermilk Mill a lot of times.
you
and
do,
I'll-
you do it backwards.
I get it backwards a lot.
That's because
so.
your sister's name though is Melissa, and you're
I
used to
know.
calling her Mel. So it's
Yep.
I
I know.
understand that.
Did you
I-
ever shorten her name prior?
No, I actually rallied against it. So Melissa liked to be called Mel in high school. That's kind of where she took that up and then carried it to college and all those years. And I always rallied against it. Was like, no, you're Melissa. You're not Mel. Like, but I think it's because I hate when people shorten my name. So in my head, it's like, no, a shortened name is bad. So let me not do that. And
They try to call you Pat. Or, I mean,
no, people used to.
I
like,
don't see a short.
yeah,
Patrick.
So Pat is it, and they used to call me that. No, they never did call me that. But people will try that, and I will say no, it's Patrick. Like, I hate that name. So, so that's why I never would call her that. Now I've embraced it because it's just too dang confusing.
yeah.
You know, there's been times
And we voted. Her and I kind of, I don't
Yeah.
want to say voted, but her and I did it very, you know,
Are you okay with
diplomatically.
this? You okay with that?
diplomatically. And
Yeah.
I'm like, if you want me to do Mel, I'll do Mel. It's not. The only one I won't do is Missy. That I vetoed that all my life.
I agree.
I said, if you want me to be Mel, I'll be Mel. That's cool.
And see, my grandma,
And she's like, no, I'll take Mel. You do
Yeah.
Melissa. And I'm like, okay, fine.
my grandma would call my sister Missy.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. I've never been.
I would.
My mom was pretty poo-poo against it too.
It's not,
It just wasn't my name.
It's weird. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm. How'd you get chili? Everybody wants to know. I don't know if you share
It's
that
really
story.
my temperament. You know, my temperament's pretty
You're
calm,
chill.
pretty chill. You know, I'm pretty level all the time. I was in a restaurant in Vegas. I was working, and not in the restaurant, but I was in Vegas for work. And the guy who I was working with was my partner, and I went to a restaurant with our manager and some other workers they're friends of ours. They worked there, working the show as well. And we went to a Mexican restaurant, and they had a dish called Dueto de Chili. It was a pair of chili rellenos on this dish. So myself and the other guy, my partner, ordered that dish, and when it wasn't called that on the menu. On the receipt, though, it was called Dueto de Chili. So my manager sees the receipt. He starts laughing. He's like, oh, these guys are Dueto de Chili. We're going to call you chili number 1 and you chili number 2. So I became chili number 1. So the next day, we go into work, and my partner was only there for a couple of days, and he was flying home. And he was there to help set up the first couple of days, and he was done. So he was done that night, and my manager's like, "Hey, where's chili number 2?" So he wasn't there the rest of the show, but I was, so I became chili at that point.
So we no longer had to differentiate
We only had
between
number
1
one
and 2.
number 2. We just had me.
And you've been chili ever
So
since.
I've
So
been chili ever since.
you're a solo to chili.
I am solo to chili.
And it's chili with a Y, not with an I.
However,
Oh, I do it with a Y.
I do it
so
with too.
the funny part, as I met my manager's mother months later, she
Okay.
lived out of town. She was in town. I met her months later. After work, I'll roll up to the bar, and she looks at me. She goes, "You must be Chili."
Yeah.
So the name was so entrenched that his mom, when he talked about work, his mom knew me as Chili.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So and it's just
hysterical.
stuck. It's just stuck.
And Patrick, you don't have a nickname because why?
So I do. I never really had one growing up because I just didn't like them and I hated the name Pat or whatever. So I never really had one growing up.
So we should vote on one for you.
Oh, hold on. So I did get a name when I went and saw Kelly and Jimmy down in Georgia. We went to a friend of theirs' house. He's an old, ornery,
Man.
pain in the ass
TNA?
man.
TNA?
We do what?
TNA?
That'd be the one.
Ah.
And he looked at me and was like, "What's up, Red?" And I've been red ever since.
Okay.
I have this red beard.
Yeah.
I don't have red hair, but I have red beard, and that's it. And so I'll call down, and maybe I have to, 7 o'clock call, and they're watching the football game or whatever, and I'm like, "Hey, Jimmy, I gotta ask a question real quick," or "Kayla, I gotta ask a question real quick," and they'll be like, "Okay, whatever." "It's Red. Red's on the phone," and they're like, no, they don't use my name around him.
funny.
So that's the closest thing I have to a nickname. But I mean, you should hear about Jerry's.
Jer Bear. Is it BER?
Yes.
Is that how you spell it? JER dash.
But let's talk about the better one,
I was
Mr.
about to
Barrow.
say,
Jerome Barrow.
Jerome Barrow.
That's a nickname that you gave me.
How did you get it?
I really don't know. I don't remember. I just know
You
you
don't
started
remember?
calling me that.
Or you don't want to tell us.
I just remember you started calling me that.
So we were in Poland, and I don't even know where to go from there. Like, why did I pick Poland? I don't know nothing
I
about
was gonna
Poland.
say I've never been. to
Uh,
Poland.
we were in the USSR, and which, yes, it was dismantled before I was born, but it
But we were still there.
we were
Yeah,
still there. And he wanted to go see this statue of Stalin, and I'm like, I don't know that it's appropriate. And he was like, he's an idol to me, so no,
Jerry's
why did I start calling you Jerome Barrow?
I think
I
it was
don't
on
know.
the podcast.
Was it before the podcast?
It was right before the podcast, right when it started.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my nickname, my real nickname that a lot of people know is Boogie. So,
Oh, yeah. I have heard people call you that, actually.
yeah.
So
that-
that was
Why?
before Expediter Boogie.
Absolutely. I was a little baby, and I would sit in the floor whenever my dad's a musician, and he would play music, and I would sit in the floor and twist and
Heck
dance
yeah.
in the floor. And so he started calling me Boogie, and it stuck with me my entire
That's
life.
pretty cool.
I don't
That's
think
pretty
I've
cool.
ever heard that
I
from
Me
you.
haven't
either.
either.
Me either.
That's-
This
So
is
whenever
why you
I
have
started
your-
my YouTube channel, that's why I came up with Expediter Boogie.
That's awesome.
I've literally traveled the entire. I've been to multiple continents with this man. This is the first time you're going to mention it.
That's a
First
cool
time
story.
anybody's ever asked you.
I thought you
You
knew.
gotta ask.
That's pretty cool.
You gotta ask.
That is very cool. That's awesome.
Do you
It
two
is.
have
Hey.
nicknames?
Can we play some music? Can you show us
Yeah, so some of those moves.
moves?
We would
I
love
am-
Come on.
Look, I'm gonna tell you something right now. I am too old to be doing that. I can't drop it like it's hot anymore. I gotta let it down like it's warm, honey.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Oh,
Eric
what about-
Hyfield, do you have a nickname?
I don't.
We worked on Slim Shady for a while, but I
Yeah,
think that's
it's
already taken.
I think it's a
Copyright
little long,
infringement.
Same
too.
with Slim Jim. It's copyrighted too. And you're not a Jim.
I say Enrique occasionally, but nobody really
I get that.
takes that one.
You two? You have nicknames?
Mm-mm.
No.
No, not,
We
not
have-
since I was a kid.
You don't have
No.
pet names for each other? Nothing?
Honey.
Baby. Honey.
Yeah, those are
All right.
Honey,
Anyways,
baby.
Sugar Pie Honeycomb.
That's a new one. I'll have to write
Don't you know
down.
that I love you?
Yeah.
I can't help myself. Nobody knows this.
I
Okay.
had a nickname up into moving to Ohio, and it just didn't transfer states.
That's right. That's because nobody knew it when you know.
I know, I didn't.
Here.
Actually,
Right, you
then
did.
everyone called me Idaho when I moved here
Yeah, she did.
for
I could see that.
years.
Yeah, Idaho.
And then when I married him, the kids were calling me Idaho, and he had to ex-nay that. He's like, "You guys can't call her Idaho."
Quick question.
She's got a name.
Quick question. Can we change her from Kayla at Hyfield Trucking to Idaho at Hyfield Trucking?
I can change it to whatever you want.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, we'll talk about that later.
But prior
Anyways.
to that, it was
Tell-
Tiny Tot.
Tell his secretary.
Tiny Tot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like Idaho potatoes? Tiny Tot?
I don't know. I was really.
She was 5'2" and this big.
I was
She looked
really
like a little
small
tater
my
tot.
whole life until I became a truck driver, and so I just the guy who came up with it, he's like, "You're just spunky and small. Your name is Tiny Tot,"
That's pretty fun.
and it stuck until I moved here.
Very
That's
cool.
pretty cool.
I forgot about Idaho. My brother started that actually.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody at the Moose. Where'd Idaho go? Where'd Idaho go?
I don't think people knew my real name.
Yeah, not for
My
a long time.
oldest, his best friend is from Tennessee, and for the longest time, that's all I ever knew his name as was Tennessee because the kids in school called him that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went to T-Nac.
Tina.
His first name is Ryan. Last name is Spring. I'm going to put him on here, but I don't know where T-Nac comes from. But I still sometimes call him Tennessee because that's literally all I knew his name. Mom, Tennessee's coming over. Mom, Tennessee's coming over. And then somewhere it shifted to T-Nac. And
We called
But-
my oldest boy Buddha for so long from a.
I've heard
from
you
a
talk
baby,
about
I've
him.
heard you talk about Buddha.
right to where Dylan, his brother, he was going to school. We were like, we called him Eric, and he was like, he literally at school was like, who's Eric? This is Eric. He was like, no, that's my brother, and his name is Buddha. He's 6 years old, 7 years old, and didn't even know his brother's real name.
Oh.
Wow, that's funny.
That's hilarious.
that's good. That one tops the cake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
I'm
good.
like, and his mom hated it. I mean, hated
Hated
his
Buddha?
nickname. Yeah, hated it.
Why?
But he must have had like a Buddha belly.
I'm not sure. Yeah, see, when he
It's
was
usually
born,
where it comes from.
he was 10 pounds and
Wow.
5 ounces, and he came out of a very small
Yeah.
person. And he just looked, my dad immediately was like, he looks like a Buddha doll. And I'm going to start calling him Buddha. I mean, he had the big belly. I mean, his cheeks were out to here. And the name just stuck. Yeah, I mean, literally, he's 26. And I still, like, yeah, Buddha's coming over. I still call him Buddha. Everybody still calls him Buddha.
You were telling a story today, and you said Buddha, and you corrected yourself and changed it. And I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah, he's, that's what everyone knows him.
There
Hey,
you
his
go.
people on his football team, his coaches was like, his name's Eric? And my dad's was the head coach at the time. You know, he's 13 years old.
Yeah.
I never knew his name was Eric. Just that's what everybody called him.
Wow.
Oh, I was another one of those big babies. I was, yeah. I look at my birth certificate and I'm like, oh, jeez. Like,
Sorry, Mom.
Sorry, Mom. Of course, I was a C-section baby, so it was a little.
Oh, better for her.
Guess I don't know.
I've had one of each, and
You have.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
How does that happen?
Right here.
1 plus 1 is 2.
do you have the-
You have a lot more
Yeah,
kids
they
than
cut
that.
this way or
I
this
have-
way?
Yeah, I've had 4, but one of them was a C-section, and I mean, everybody says a lot of stuff about a lot of things. I tell you, the labor, the whole process, even the recovery for her was way better than the other 3 that I had. I mean, honestly,
Oh yeah.
I was like, man, I wish I could have went back and had just said, man, don't you do this? And
So
stuff.
my oldest sister, who's now no longer with us, she died when she was 5, but she was the OG breech baby, and they had a cesarean her out. And I guess back then, once you did that, they pretty much just
Which they don't anymore.
All had
They
to go
offer
that way.
the other.
yes. Now that's not the case anymore, but it was back then. I do remember that mom had a very distinct scar, which she was never like intimidated by because it was just a thing back then.
Right.
Which now I think would be mortified by most people, but back then it just is what it is. So we all came out the same way. So by the time she had me, she was accustomed to it, kind of knew what she was getting into. But I was a huge baby, and my mom was a petite lady. Like she was very, very small. So I just, I felt bad, but I had no control over it. I'm not the one that told her to keep eating the pickles and ice cream. Like, that's on her. So, but we wanted to get back this week a little bit towards the Hyfield thing. We've been, a couple weeks now. We've diverted and we haven't really talked about it. But we've been getting some feedback saying like, why aren't you following up with the Hyfield story? And I teased this out 3 weeks ago about talking about one thing we did in the industry that really kind of changed the straight truck environment. Some would say for the better, some would say not so much. But we made a big change in the way we built our trucks from our first 2-bathroom trucks to our second 2-bathroom trucks. So we changed things from our first 2-bathroom trucks to our second 2-bathroom trucks. We knew we always wanted to celebrate the teams that were high performing and were really killing out there. And a lot of times, if you're really high performing and killing it, it's because you're staying out for a longer period of time, right?
Right.
So how can we make you more comfortable and more excited to stay out? So we immediately said the bathroom truck, which is why in our first 3 years we ended up buying 2 of them. But for those of you who don't know, a straight truck in most states, not all, most states is limited to 40 foot long. They cannot be longer than that. We have no choice, but we have to be under that 40 foot, right? So 39 foot, 11 inches, kind of the goal. And so that's kind of dictated how we build these trucks. Back in the day, the Freightliner Cascadia, which we built on, had a short nose variant that was 113 inches BBC. That is a front bumper to the back of the cab. That's super short. And so we were able to, basically take, all right, we need a 20-foot box because that's what was required to be a D unit with both carriers. 113 inches from the front bumper to the back of the cab, and that kind of gives you your spacing for your sleeper, right? So that's kind of how we figured it up. Well, if you do that math, a 120-inch sleeper truck doesn't fit, right? Like when you actually sit down and make the dimensions out, because that box has to be 20 foot of usable space. So you've got thickness of your back doors, you've got thickness of the wall in the very front.
Yeah.
Plus, if it's an insulated truck, so if it's a FedEx truck, it's 3 inches of insulation on top of that on both ends. And then these trucks are air ride, so they're bouncing up and down. So you actually have to put a gap between the box and the sleeper, because as that sleeper goes up and down on its own independent air ride suspension, if it's right next to each other, it'll rub against it and it'll work a hole in the back wall. So you have to put like a 3 to 4 inch gap there so that you can let that freely bounce up and down and not hit. So we sat down and we said, all right, how can we make this happen? And the initial response was, it's impossible. You can't do it. There's not enough room. So we built 2 trucks, as we said in the podcast a couple weeks ago, as Super Cs. These are 18-foot boxes, but they have that tag axle so they can carry a ton of weight. They just can't carry the full 20 foot of cargo space that would be ideal. So we did 2 of those, and it really bothered me that we were not able to, we're spending this much money and we're not able to maximize our earning potential, right? Because you do give up a little bit having that smaller box. Not a ton, but you do give up some. So we sat down, Eric and I went down to Texas, and we sat down with Wayne, who ran AA Sleeper at the time. And at this point, we'd already built 2 trucks with him. He'd already renovated one of our trucks. He knew who we were. We had pretty good rapport. And I said, I know we have 114 inches of real sleeper space to work with, because if you do all the math, it comes down to 114 inches, 6 inches shorter than a normal 10-foot truck or a normal 120-inch sleeper. So I'm like, if we can do a 120-inch sleeper with a bathroom, why can't we pull 6 inches out of this somewhere? And I'm thinking maybe we pull half it out of the shower, pull half of it out of a closet. I think there's ways to manipulate this. And he's like, I hear what you're saying, but A, we don't know if it'll work and if it'll sell, and B, the shower molds they get were literally a one-piece shower mold.
So there's no wiggle room.
So there's no wiggle room there.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's got to be a way. We got to figure it out. So he and I molded over. I kept sending him drawings on CAD paper of kind of what I was thinking, and he would come back and say, here's why this won't work. And we just went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he called me one day out of the blue, and I was like, hey, what's up, Wayne? He said, I was literally in my shower this morning, and I had this idea. And I'm like, pray tell. He said, I think we can take that one-piece fiberglass shower, cut it down the middle, cut it again 3 inches over, and re-fiberglass it back together so we don't have to change our mold. We don't have to do anything with that. And re-fiberglassing fiberglass is really easy.
Right.
And it can be done very, very nicely. You'll never know. And he said, I think I can do what you want to do. I was like, let's build it. So I put it in order with my sales guy, two trucks, and told him how we're going to build it. And he literally told me this is a terrible idea. I'll do it because I'll take your money.
Yeah.
He said, but you're buying these trucks. If you get them and you don't like them, you're buying them. And I said, that's fair. Well, I'll take that gamble. So we built them. Took a few months. They come up to Columbus, Ohio from down in Texas. And Eric and I are still, at this point, we're still driving. So we're out there riding the roads. And I get a phone call from my dealer. It sounds like it. From my truck salesman. And he says, hey, Patrick. I said, your truck showed up on the lot today. I was like, oh, okay, how they look? He said, they look amazing. He's like, I can't believe you did this. Like,
Wow.
He was completely floored. He's like, everything is just shrunk down just a little bit to where he's like, it feels huge inside. They're very, very nicely equipped. We did solid surface countertops. We did undermounted sinks. We did, undermounted cooktops, which we actually changed that later on because that didn't work out as nice as we thought it would. Everything was chrome faucet. It was super nicely done. And he's like, I can't get over how nice these trucks are. And so I was like, oh, I feel pretty good about that. So we were able to go through and we got those delivered. We put a couple teams in them. Then we ordered, I want to say 4 more of those, along with the regular 8-foot, 96-inch normal custom sleepers.
Without a bathroom.
Without a bathroom
Yeah.
for like new teams coming on board. You got to cut your teeth somehow. We did that, and then we built one on a Volvo as well that went to Kelly and Jimmy. Really dialed that design in, and when he told me he really liked it, part of me was going like, how much of this is you really like it? How much of this is you're just blowing smoke up my because you want me to buy more trucks, right? That dude went on and sold tons of these trucks to everybody and his brother. It became the hottest selling truck he had.
Wow.
And I was like, I didn't get no cut of that. Like all of a sudden we helped bring this industry into a really cool place and get no props, but that's fine. So
I love that story.
Started yeah, thank you.
I really do.
It was a tough project to get done. It really was not easy, but I knew that was the way forward. And so we pressed on. And again, working with someone like Wayne really helped. AA was going through some changes. And so we actually had the opportunity to build one on a Bolt sleeper. Got to work with Bolt. Bolt's design process, very different than AA. Very different. So I had to go and learn that process with them. We built one of those trucks, and it was really cool. Couple things we messed up on, but we learned. Like, your first design's never going to be perfect. Even on the 4 more that we designed from AA after the first 2, we modified things, right? Like, you always perfect. So we were super happy we had this product. We love, it's great, yada, yada. And don't you know, Freightliner Cascadia came out, and they said, Freightliner came out and said, hey, we're redesigning the Cascadia. Here's the new Cascadia. And it was pretty. They changed the dash. They changed the hood. The suspension changed. It was really massive changes.
Changes your dimensions.
And because of that, they made their nose longer. So on the short nose truck, it actually had a longer nose than the old one did. So we had to kind of go back to the drawing board and go like, all right, where do we pull 2 inches out of?
Oh.
Wow.
And so we've
and
kind of...
2 inches is a lot when you're talking...
It's a lot.
staying within specs
It
for
is.
DOT or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you're talking like those massive ARIs that we all see at the truck shows or
Yeah.
going down the road, 144, 156, 168, 180, those massive big dogs, they got so much room in there. Things don't matter as much, right? But when you're talking about cramming all that stuff into a little bitty sleeper, when you lose 2 inches, it's brutal.
Sure.
So the current design we're at is 110 inch. So we've actually whittled it down 2 more inches. So we're at 110 now, and we have worked very closely with Bolt to be able to pull this off. As a matter of fact, if you look at the ARI stuff, I know a lot of people have asked, why don't we have more ARI trucks? We have 0 ARI straight trucks, and part of that is they can't do it. Period. So the bathroom integrated sleeper, 110-inch truck, so we can still put the 20-foot box in the back. They don't have the ability to do.
Wow.
So that's one reason why we don't have any of theirs. But it's been really cool to like go through and be a part of that change of the industry.
Yeah.
And like now we're doing bathrooms on M2s. Kayla's kind of helping me work that program over at Panther, which has been interesting, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it has.
it's been a lot of fun. We're experimenting with single axles versus double axles and finding freight lanes that work really well with the single axle application. We're about to do our first no liftgate truck over at Panther.
Yep.
And not because you would think like, oh, you're taking a liftgate off. That's bad for business. You're going to be able to do liftgate loads. But there's actually a bunch of auto. Is it auto
Mhm.
we're doing?
Yep.
For Nissan, right? In General Motors?
Mostly General Motors.
Okay. That they are, they won't accept a truck with a liftgate.
Wasn't Ford like that when we used to drive? Here,
Yes.
here in,
It's
Col-
because
here
they
in
can't
Ohio.
latch underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So it's been so long. I'm trying to remember. So when you back into a dock, they have a green light and a red light.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, some of the docks have a hook.
Yes.
Basically,
Like a grabbing arm. Yep.
that comes up and grabs the ICC bumper.
Okay, yeah,
What's that bump? Yeah.
ICC bumper.
Yeah,
is what it's
it
called.
grabs
Okay.
that, and if it hooks onto that, then the light turns green.
Yes.
And on the inside, you have the outside light turns red, so the driver knows they can't leave. On the inside, it turns green, so the people working on the dock know
Yeah, they
it's
can
safe
go
to
in.
enter the truck. Yeah.
And on the new, like on an older plant, I think they could be manipulated a little bit,
They could be bypassed.
but on the
Yes.
newer ones,
they're
they
not.
can't.
Safety wise, they're not.
So, like, if you don't have an ICC bumper and you back into that dock, it never latches,
Right.
it never turns red, and they can press that button all they want. It will not raise that door.
Right.
They will not be able to load your truck. So there's a segment of freight that we've been okay missing out on, but we are kind of talking to other fleet owners. We're talking to Panther. We're trying to like navigate this and going like, you know what? We need to test it. We need to see what it's like, get an idea of it. So we're actually about to put our first non-liftgate truck on so we can capture some of that freight that we've been missing out on.
Get some data points.
Wow.
Absolutely get some data and figure out where does this make sense? Where doesn't this make sense?
You can always add one later. If it
You can
doesn't
always,
work out.
yes,
Yeah,
that's the
true.
beauty of a liftgate. You can
Yeah.
always add it later. It's not a set in stone for life kind of thing. Or you may find that, one team likes to run auto parts and another team hates it. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
it's different shippers. You're
Yeah.
dealing with different personalities, all that kind of stuff. So it's always nice to have options, right? I am very excited about the future of this kind of bathroom sleeper project, but also like for those who don't know, the Freightliner M2 is no longer the M2; it's now the M2 Plus.
Right.
So
It's beautiful.
It's
It's a nice truck.
such an improvement.
Yeah.
Such an
Huge.
improvement.
Huge.
So we've been making some big changes with that as well, and
Jerry, have you driven in one of the new ones?
I have not driven it, but I was in it. I did a video with Kayla and Kelly,
Mhm.
and it's a gorgeous truck.
Yeah.
Yes, it
I was
is.
really shocked and surprised.
And you've been in one, Eric, since
Yeah.
you've been in the yard.
I've been
Much different than what we started in.
Yeah, and I got to drive it across the yard. It's definitely it's
Something
cool.
different.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's nice. It's nice for sure.
it is really nice. And
I felt like the first time I got in it and I'm in the truck, I had to get out. And inside the truck, I felt like I was in a Cascadia. and I get out and close the door and I look at it and I'm like, this is like in the movies where they're showing somebody in a certain vehicle, but when they show the outside shot, it's a different vehicle because
Movie magic.
And that's what it felt like. It was like I was in a Cascadia and now I stepped out and I was in an M2. I don't get it. So it's a very different experience.
Even on the outside, the aesthetics they've changed. It's
They have.
all LED. Well, not all LED. I guess it's LED headlamps and
Right.
bright lights, but I think it's regular incandescent turn signals. They have moved to like a really cool looking chrome, more aggressive grill.
They have.
The visor, the sun visor over the cab is now chrome. It's not
Yeah.
white anymore. Like they've done a lot of things to really just kind of make it look a little bit nicer,
have.
edge it up
Nice.
a little bit.
The
So
mud flaps on the front fenders are still too long, but they'll fix that
You know.
eventually.
that's it's funny those rubber mud flaps. They're that thick hard rubber.
Yeah.
And so when you make a turn and they are, like I said, too low, you just hear
You hear
like
the
the most
scraping.
horrible
It really
scraping
is.
noise. But you do that a few times, and enough that rubber scrapes off, and it's gone.
It's gone.
Like-
No more. Yeah.
So if you're wondering when you're driving, you're like, why is there like rubber randomly in different spots?
Yeah.
Well,
That's why.
we contributed.
Yep.
I pulled over the first time I drove a truck that did that, and it sounds terrible.
It sounds terrible.
Yeah.
I pulled over like this truck is breaking down.
Yeah.
Like I was like I can feel it in the floorboards. I'm pretty sure I called
Yeah.
maintenance.
Yeah.
It was like I can feel it in the floorboards. It sounds terrible. Something's wrong. And he's like, it's your mud flaps. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, at least I'm being cautious.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did the same thing. I pulled over.
I did the
got
same
out
thing.
and looked. I was like, "What's going on
I
here?"
did
This
the
is
same
I
thing.
did
I
the
think
same
I actually called Patrick because
Yeah.
I'd never driven an M2 and I was bringing one back from Bolt. And
Yeah.
it did it to me, and I immediately called him, and I'm like, something's wrong.
And
Yeah.
Bolt is actually the ones who installs those, and they always cut them way too long.
when I did the first one. I called Melissa. I was like, "I need to find another job because he's going to fire me for whatever broke."
It's terrifying. I remember the first time I got one, I picked it up for FIDA, back old FIDA, and I was driving to, I want to say maybe Pilot to get an empty weight ticket or something like that. And I got off the interstate at the Pilot, went around, did everything, and it was going through the Pilot's parking lot because the Pilot's parking lot in Columbus is just,
Oh yeah.
woo!
Oh yeah.
It's
Something.
it's mountainous.
It,
And it should not be. I drove over one of those little Humpty Doos,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, "Gah!" And it did quiet. And I was like, what on earth did I just, like, what just happened? And then
Did you
another
bottom
one
out?
happened, and I could not figure out what it was. And got on the scale, and everything's fine. And I was driving home, or driving back to the lot, and I made one of those right, left-hand turns, whatever it was. And I was in a rut, so the tire went low in the rut, but right outside of it, that concrete, swoops up, and it grabbed, and it made the same noise. And I'm like, that's a brand new truck. What is going on? And so I got back to the lot, and I'm like, I had even called our salesman and was like, dude, I don't know what's going on. I got to bring this back and figure it out. I got back to the lot, and I'm like walking around trying to figure out what it was. And I saw the mud flaps,
Already
and it
getting
was
eaten away?
already eaten away, rough. And I'm like, because when I picked it up, the mud flaps are smooth and nice and pretty.
yeah.
It was through me driving it around that they started shaving off that extra, and it just kind of looks nasty, like almost like a blown tire. You know how a blown tire has
Right.
that rough rubber look to it, and it had that. And I was like, oh, that's what it is. And I was like, I have a feeling. So, in our yard, there's a few places where for the drainage, it kind of like slopes down.
Right.
So I specifically drove into that and could duplicate it, and I was like, oh, okay, now I know what it is. So, yeah. But I always forget to tell people that because it's just, it only happens for a little while. It's
It
brand
does.
new, and
It
then once
goes
it's
away.
shaved down, it's gone.
Yep.
So,
It'll freak you out.
it's so weird.
Oh yeah.
It's,
Oh yeah.
yeah. I'm curious how long it lasts. Like, I'd like to talk to a team who gets one brand new. How long until that stops happening?
Talk to the people getting that M2.
Yeah.
Because it happened. It happened to me at the yard. The sales guy said something. They talked about it when we were picking it up, and it happened to me at the yard. And if it wasn't for them talking about it, I would have forgot about it. I'd been like, "What?" Because it happened. I thought, "Yeah, it's got to be that."
Yeah.
I decided it's got to be.
Did you get to meet our sales guy over at FIDA?
Yeah.
He's a fun guy, right?
Yeah, he's nice.
Oh, that's great.
People often ask me when I talk on the phone doing recruiting.
Yeah.
And I'll try to relate. I too drove on the Panthers side for 3 years, blah, blah, blah. Husband and I have been off the road now in staff roles, and people ask me, why did you choose to come off the road? Why make that move? And I first of all, I'll start with, honestly, we didn't think it was going to be that, but my biggest reason is, first off, I believe in what you're doing. I think you're setting up contractors, new to the industry or wanting to make a life change. You're setting them up for success with many things. The way that you have implemented a maintenance program, definitely the mentor program, and then just the staff, all but maybe one or two have actually done the industry, so we all understand. But I think the biggest one is you have vision, both you and Eric do. You have this hunger for learning and wanting to do things maybe slightly different, but slightly different to be successful. And I feel your story on how to get that sleeper down to the right size, and just being relentless on it and seeing that vision and that you knew it could be done. You just needed to find the right combination. And those are the things that fuel my passion personally, for wanting to be part of something bigger and something successful, and to see others come in and be a part of that as well, even if you're a contractor or as staff members, but definitely as a contractor. I think that's just something fun, is the vision that Hyfield has, and that future vision. So I think that's pretty cool that you did something like that you created it, that, trucks out there on the road have the Hyfield signature to it, or whoever created it, whether you got bonus points for it or kudo points or whatever, but that you're just part of that. And I see it with other things that you've done, and I'm not going to share other stories because you probably have those down the road, but different things that you're doing to the trucks, different parts and pieces of the equipment that you've had your hand in with design, or tweak this, tweak that, and all for the comfort, I think, of the contractors, or as some people call themselves, drivers, but also, for optimal equipment efficiency. I see you doing both and coming up with a happy medium that is successful, not only for a business owner or business entity to be successful and profitable, but for the comfort of the drivers, the contractors. So, and I love being a part of that.
Well, we really do try to stay focused on the future and perfect what we already have, right? I think it's one thing that we both, and I think most of our staff feels, is that we're not content status quo. We're not content with just doing okay. Sure. We want to be trendsetters, and we want to be leaders, and trying to figure out what that looks like next year, and in 5 years, and in 10 years. It's funny. I talk to friends, and I'm like, what do you see? What's your 10-year, vision for your fleet look like, right? And these are not people I want to work for me. It's just friends, and what are you seeing? What are the trends you're thinking, and thinking 10 years out? And they're like, I'm thinking, how am I going to pay my bills next week? And I'm like, that's not a place we want to ever come from. Right. We want to be like, how can we do something that is unique, that is trend setting? I mean, we talk about our slogan being like Team Trucking Reimagined. So how do we reimagine it? And if we reimagine it and we build it, and it's going a certain way, then how do we reimagine to make it better? How do we reimagine to make that better? How do we get bigger, better, smarter? We're always going to be contractor focused. We're always going to be thinking about the person behind the steering wheel, of how are they going to be able to run their business? How are they going to be able to make money? How are they going to be comfortable? How do we bring that to even other industries outside of expediting? So it's kind of what's always on our brain, and then going forward, and some of these things are long-term, multi-year long processes, and some of these things are changing next week. We're going to do something different, so it's fun. And then also, literally litmus testing everything. Hey, did that work? No, it didn't work. Well, let's scrap it. If it does work, great. If it doesn't work, I mean, I've got next week we'll talk about some stuff with the APUs, and we'll talk about things that I've learned over the years. And not all of it's going to be pro us. Some of it's going to be like, I made a mistake. So we'll talk about that next week. But
I got to hop in that unique. You were talking about it last week. I think it was the unique build where the bed's on the side and
It's
the
cool, isn't
bathroom's
it?
in the back.
Eric came home talking about
Oh!
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like an apartment. Like
You
I
forgot to
walk
send me
in
a
and
picture.
The counter space is
Ridiculous.
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it truly is.
Yes.
I hopped in there today and I was just
Woo! I love the fridge.
oh, I love the fridge.
Yeah.
Yep.
it cuts your space down a little bit. Like when you walk from the cab to the bunk, you don't have a little less space there because it's not as wide or whatever.
Sure.
But I think it's. I mean that layout. I was thinking, man, I wish we would have had this layout. It was nice.
Yeah, it was great.
What kept you from reproducing that?
The bathroom is smaller than
The
what is
bath-
currently
The
in other
bathrooms,
trucks.
yeah, the bathroom's a little petite. The people that were driving it weren't super tall. If you notice, the entire outside of the truck looks different. That is a larger sleeper, and so we had to use a Western Star product that had a shorter nose on it to be able to make it happen. Because of that, there were some compromises. So we don't have the transmission we prefer. It's a good one. It's still got a great transmission in it, but it's not the one that we prefer. It's an Eaton Fuller auto. It's not a Detroit transmission. It doesn't have like the steering wheel controls. It's got that chrome old fashioned steering
Old
wheel on
school
it.
steering wheel. Yeah.
It's
that
got
sounds cool.
All the buttons are on the dash. And there's a ton of buttons on the dash
Ton of
because
buttons.
everything is button driven. Doghouse really cuts into the cab quite a bit, which a doghouse is the hump from the engine. Because it is a shorter nose, the engine actually kind of goes into the cab area. So
I
they have to
didn't
cut
notice
out, and
that
it's-
today. That's weird. I just
Yep.
hopped in and
So it's not quite as fuel efficient. It's pretty good, but not quite. It's got those old fashioned rectangular headlights, from like 1974.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't as great as the new halogen projections or the LED lights. And so there's just a number of like things, and it was more expensive. That's a more expensive chassis to have. It's a very durable chassis. That thing will last forever. That's a 2 million mile truck, and you can see it too. Like if you look at the coolant tank, the coolant tank is black steel. It is not that clear plastic that
Plastic.
we're used to.
Yeah.
There's almost no plastic underneath the hood of that truck.
Okay.
It is a very robust, very strong chassis. It's more expensive because of that. Losing some of the creature comforts of the steering wheel and such, we just decided that wasn't a great way to build going forward.
Okay.
So that's why we don't have more of them. I love it.
it's pretty cool.
If I was
I like
if I was driving a truck, I'd be so happy. I think drives good. It actually rides pretty good on the interstate, but it is different.
I think if
know?
it were me and it was like I owned the truck,
Mm-hmm.
personally, my color choice might be a little different. With the white does make it feel airy.
Yes.
Or at least the headboard of the bed, or when you first walk in, that surprised me.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, aha! I remember you told me about this truck. I think a mural there would be kind of cool. And again, this is all just
Yeah.
aesthetics on the inside. If one was to own, it was mine. But the layout, I agree with Eric. The counter space, which I know you talked about that last time, that's really kind of what the team wanted. Very, very. It almost felt like an apartment, kind of with the wall and a building, and it just had a different feel to it than just open air space or open concept of what
Yeah.
the new trucks are. Not that I'm saying that the new trucks aren't
Well, then we did
just as fantastic, but it was different.
that one's uber custom, and we did put a lot of thought into, the team being an older couple, and this is a team that's been with us from day one. So they just recently retired, but they were with us for over 10 years.
And
The-
they drove
the-
this truck the whole time?
No, not the whole time.
No.
They were in 3 or 4 different trucks with us,
Oh, okay.
but this was the last one they were in. So the one before this was identical. The sleeper was identical, but it was on a Cascadia. But it was that short nose Cascadia, and it was one of those 18-foot boxes that we talked about that we built years ago. So then this truck, same thing. Like the refrigerator was a little higher off the ground than they normally are because they didn't like to bend over as much. But below it was a huge drawer that had the ability to put like pots and pans and things like that
Nice.
in. So there were a lot of little hey, can we get this added? Can we tweak this, tweak that, right?
Yeah.
And when you got a team that's been with you for 6-7 years, you do it.
Sure. It's pretty cool. If you have time when you're down,
I was gonna say I should
it's
go
worth
look
going
at it
and
tomorrow.
looking. Just
Yeah.
a
I've
fun
heard
for-
about it from so many different people now
Yeah.
that I have curiosity is gonna make me go down there.
Yeah.
It's a cool truck, and we're actually about to lease purchase that truck out. So I think the people that are doing it listen to this podcast. They're probably hearing us talk about it.
It's pretty cool.
But
It is. Have you been in it, Jerry?
I have not.
it's
Well, you might get in there before it goes off the lot, but It's a pretty cool.
It's unique.
It's unique.
Yeah.
It's a very cool build. We did an extra, most of our steer axles are 13.3. We did a 14.6 on that one because we knew it was going to be a heavier truck, and it's double framed. It's ridiculous. It's might be one of the heaviest trucks we own, empty.
Wow.
But it's a really nice build, and it's one of those where it's really well built. It's going to last a long, long time.
I think it shows the evolution.
Yeah.
Of the product that you now have, and that's fun to look back maybe at history.
Yeah, and this truck, I mean, we could still build that today. It's
Sure.
That truck today probably be close to $400,000. I'm sorry.
Wow.
Ouch.
Yeah, close to $400,000. Which that didn't exist 5 years ago when we built it.
Right.
It's a unique build.
Yeah.
I was very proud of that one. That's one of those things where we spent a lot of time designing and building just for one team. It got built, it got done, and then we kind of focused on the more mass-produced.
Sure. Sure.
Because I really wanted to identify, this was a really unique bespoke truck for a particular couple, and it was fun to do. But what I really, where I really put a lot of my focus was on how do we make the best of all worlds in a different truck.
Yeah.
Like that truck, for example, doesn't have a television in it.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
I didn't either.
And so, because they could care less about it. We did put the satellite in, and we did have a place for the television. It's just not in there. Majority, depending on the evolution of the bathroom truck you get, the new ones now, like yours, Jerry, had the pull-down TV from the ceiling, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've
So-
never seen that one. I like those.
Yeah, so that's, you see little things like that are like, I think that's more appreciated by teams.
Get more counter space.
Yeah, out of
Yes,
the way.
getting it off the roof, making sure that we have enough room on the counter for the sink, the stove, and a coffee pot.
Right.
Now, granted, people aren't necessarily bringing out their $1,500 Breville coffee makers like
Jerry did.
Jerry did.
I didn't.
But yeah, make sure we have dependable quality stuff that will make a lot of people happy. And I think that's what we have. That product we have right now, I'm very proud of. Our 96-inch sleeper trucks, our 110-inch sleeper trucks, our side-by-sides that we have on both sides are very good, very, very good products that we've really been working hard to dial in. So, yeah, I'm proud of that. And it's been fun watching that evolution happen.
Yeah.
And I just saw that Freightliner is dropping a new Cascadia soon, and I'm like, oh, great. Let's
Yeah,
see.
a new design.
Let's see what we got to change now.
Yeah.
Can't wait. I remember when those things would happen, like when the 5700 from Western Star came out, how excited I was about this exciting new product, and now I'm like, I guess me heartburn. Why do we have to change something that's working?
Yeah.
So we'll deal with it, and we'll make the necessary changes. But yeah. So I think we have dragged on long enough. It's been a lot of fun. I always enjoy my time hanging out with y'all.
Yeah.
I welcome Kayla and Eric back. It's been a lot of fun having y'all here as well.
Thank you.
I think Jerry said, is it one more episode?
Yep. One more and you're permanent.
One more in your permanent cast.
Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, thumbs down if you don't like us, but I don't know why you would. Go ahead and visit us over at hyfieldtrucking.com if you are interested in learning more about Hyfield and what we do over here in the expediting industry. And shoot us over an email at theouterbeltpodcast@gmail.com if you're interested in giving us ideas for shows or anything you want us to talk about. We'd be more than happy to oblige with that. You can also listen to this on your favorite audio podcast as you're driving down the road. We are available on all the most popular streaming apps out there. Also call us at 833-HIFIELD. Numbers at the bottom of the screen. Someone in recruiting would love to talk to you.
The Outer Belt Podcast.
I did.
The I love it.
The.
You're going to get a call that says, can we talk to Buttermilk?
I know, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I had some Hyfield's page. They post birthdays for all of contractors and staff, and somebody wrote "Happy Birthday, Buttermilk." I thought that was pretty funny, pretty fitting.
I thought so too.
Yep.
It wasn't. Was it me?
No.
It was someone else. Someone beat me to it.
It's Trey Sensen. Shout out to him. I know he listens. He watches. He is a loyalist of Hyfield and all things. And when the time is right, I know they will make the jump over to us.
They've been watching for a while now. Yep.
Very beginning of when at least Vince and I started, and
Yeah.
I think even before that.
Yeah.
But we've done dinner with him and his family
Very cool.
and some others. But anyway, appreciated all the birthday love. And no, it's not about me, but Buttermilk's pretty funny.
Well, thank you all for hanging out with us. Again, thank you one more time to Kayla and Eric. Eric, welcome again to the team. Can't wait. A few more days in the yard, then you're onto the computers and phone calls, and you start going gray. Thank you to my Outer Belt cast. It's a lot of fun hanging out with you. I appreciate all that y'all do on a week-to-week basis. In the meantime, until next week, I should say,
Yes.
stay safe, make good decisions.
Don't leave money on the table.
And keep those wheels a turning.
Good night.